Good morning everyone, it's Camille here from Bedford 5-star fitness camps. A few of you didn't understand the diagram that was on the bottom of the fat loss usage article that I handed out this week. So what I'm going to try and do is just go through a typical not what to do and what we want you to start doing, and give you two examples as if when you come to the 10 AM session, how you should plan your intake of food that day depending on your exercise, and then also give you an example if during that week you attend the evening sessions. Okay, so at the end of the video you should kind of have an idea of what this diagram is all about and how we can use fat usage more throughout our 24 body clock rather than fat storage. Okay. So this is a diagram that was on the bottom of the article. Now I put this on there because it's a typical example of what somebody would go through in terms of their fat storage and fat usage for a typical day. Okay, so if we look at the diagram quickly, I mean, if you get your article out in front of you, it'll be easier to follow because I'm not sure how good it's going to show up on a video. But if we look at a diagram, we've got two sections there. Anything above this black line that's in the middle of the screen is our fat storing zone. Okay, so our aim and our goal is to use fat, not to store it, for obvious reasons. We want to look lean, we want to have more muscle so that we can perform better in sessions and just basically look good and feel good in our clothes and be a lot healthier. Okay, so any time we spend above that line, we're going to be storing fat. Anything below that line, so this area here, in the red I've put as our fat utilisation zone. So this is where we want to be. So a typical person, somebody who works 9 to 5, for example, they go to an office, whether it's in Bedford or London or travelling elsewhere, a typical 9 to 5 office job, or school teacher, whatever, this will probably be your typical chart. Okay, so really quickly, just for this diagram, what happens is when we go to sleep, we're in a fast. Okay, and most of us are sleeping, if we're lucky, for at least 7 hours. Okay, so we're fasting for 7 hours, definitely overnight. Okay, and if we stop eating around about 10 o'clock, which a typical person probably would do after their snacks post dinner, then we've got a few more hours in there. Okay, so from 10 till 7 AM we're in fat storing zone after our snack or late dinner. But as we fast and we sleep, we burn what's in our bloodstream, which is usually the glucose, and we're without food for long enough that we drop behind and go into the fat utilisation zone. So when we're sleeping, towards the morning time, we'll be in our fat utilisation zone, which is fantastic. So when we wake up, we're probably burning fat. Okay, so how much fat we're burning depends on how much sugar we've had before we've gone to sleep. Okay, so if it's a little amount of sugar that we've had in that evening meal, then we'll be further down into this utilisation zone. But this isn't any indication of any proportion. It's just a pattern for you to kind of relate to. Okay, so when you wake up in the morning, which is this box here, you're quite low into your fat utilisation zone, which is fantastic. Okay, and then you'll probably wake up, and if you're local and you start your work at 9 o'clock, you'll have breakfast around about 8 AM. Okay, so what happens then is any exercise or walking a dog before we go to work, anything after our breakfast, we will be using whatever, whether it's glucose or protein or fat that we put in our body. Okay, and most of us will have a sugary breakfast. Okay, so it's a cereal, milk, toast, muesli, anything like that, breakfast bar, will immediately add sugar intake into the system. A typical breakfast would make our fat utilisation zone decrease, okay? So after our breakfast, we've probably gone almost close to the middle centre line here and toppling into that fat storing zone, okay? Because we can't use our fat stores if sugar or because of the increase in insulin, if sugar is present, okay? So after breakfast, we go into lunchtime, and then we'll probably follow it with a sandwich or, I don't know, a smoothie or something like that, okay? Something, again, that's sugary, okay? But it'll probably be very little protein in proportion to the sugar. So what happens then is we haven't done any heavy exertion here, high intensity exercise in between waking up, having breakfast and having lunch. Obviously you're working in the office, etc., or, you know, not really having time to work out during the day. So we've got breakfast, which is an increase in sugar, so we're burning sugar. We then have lunch, which will probably be an increase in sugar again, which will take our line further up into the fat storing zone. And then we might have a little bit of a break between lunch and a snack, okay? So we might drop a little bit, because as we're walking around the office, or we might go for a brisk walk at lunchtime, then we'll start using that sugar, getting closer to our fat stores, and the line will drop down, okay? We'll have probably a snack around about 1 p.m. So the snack here will again, it's usually sugary, will increase that and keep us in the fat storing zone, okay? So we're nowhere near burning any fat from the moment that we wake up to around about 1 p.m, 2 p.m. What will happen then is you'll come home after your snack, and it'll be a little bit of a fast, because you'll have picked the kids up from school, or I don't know, come home, tidy up, sort yourself out, get a bath, and we'll drop down into our fat storing zone, okay, and we'll have dinner, okay, or we'll go to boot camp. Sometimes we're so rushed, the train gets in late and we have to go straight to boot camp, okay. So if we go straight to boot camp before dinner and we haven't had any snacks or sugary drinks in between that time, then that's great, because we're doing a lot of work in boot camp. We're working high intensity for an hour, and we'll probably drop, if you put a workout in between there and you consider the fast time between snack and dinner, into that fat utilisation zone. So that's brilliant. However, predominantly, if you look back throughout the day, we've been more in fat storing zone than fat utilisation zone, here and here, compared to what's gone on at the top. So 86. So that's if we have a boot camp session in the evening, and then after boot camp we'll then go home and we'll have dinner. It doesn't have to be 5 p.m, but if you had it at 5 p.m. before the boot camp session, then you probably wouldn't even get back into fat storing zone. You'd have dinner, and then after dinner you might get back in fat storing zone again, depending on what kind of energy you put in via your food groups, okay. So what's happening there is, throughout the day, you're predominantly in fat storing zone, which is not what we want, okay. So now what we're going to do is quickly look at a few examples of what we shouldn't do and what we should do. So again, we've got 4 charts on here, if you can see, and the top ones are going to be your 10 a.m. session. So this is what we should do and what we shouldn't do in our 10 a.m. scenario. If we're training at 10 a.m. at boot camp, then this is the best possible scenario we can put our bodies in, so that we can burn as much fat as possible and use it rather than store it, okay. So on this chart here, we're going to show you what not to do, and on this chart here, we're going to show you what to do. So we've got the crosses and the tick, okay. So if at 10 a.m, okay, we wake up at 10 a.m, remember we've gone to sleep and we wake up and we're in fat usage, okay, because you haven't had anything to eat in fat usage. Usually before boot camp, everyone's usually advised to have something to eat so that you've got energy to train, okay? So a normal person would have some kind of breakfast here. Let's use an example from the Bible. Would have some fruit, which if you're new to boot camp, that's fantastic. And then you'd come and do your 10 a.m. session, okay? And during that 10 a.m. session, you'd probably come into the fat burning zone after you've used up your breakfast, okay? So your sugar from your breakfast will take you up past the fat storing zone, and your boot camp session would bring you back down. So that's great. So at boot camp we're burning some fat. Super. Then what will happen is you'd only probably train once that day, so you need to have obviously your meal. So you've got your lunch in there, snack and then dinner, or dinner then snack, however you do it. Okay, so generally there'll be carbs in that lunch, which is sugar, mainly carbs, maybe a little bit of protein. Your snack will predominantly be sugar, a little bit of fat, and dinner will be high in sugar as well, until you go to sleep, which will bring you back into your fat storing zone, ready for the next day. Okay, so what we're saying there is having breakfast before 10 a.m. is perhaps not a good idea, because what we can do, if we wake up on a morning where we're having a 10 a.m. session, we'll be sleeping. We'll wake up at 7, 8 o'clock. We'll have a detox drink just to get our bodies going, maybe a little bit of filtered water, a bit of ginger and a squeeze of lemon, just to kickstart the metabolism and make sure the body is awake and working. Then what will happen is we'll go to boot camp at 10 a.m. after we've tidied up, got the kids to school, etc. And we drop further down into that fat usage zone. Okay, now what you can see there is you're spending longer in your fat usage time if you have your breakfast after boot camp. Okay, so this is your boot camp workout. You'll then have breakfast, but because you've been further into your fat burning zone from the last time you're eating in the evening to 11:30 after the workout, then when you have a snack, if you keep it predominantly protein and fat, you'll still stay in this fat usage zone. Okay, that's not to say you can't have a piece of fruit or a little bit of soup for your lunch, and that's where the type of carbohydrates come into place. So we're not going for any starchy carbs or anything like that. Then we might creep up a little bit for a healthy snack, keeping it protein. And dinner, if we keep it mainly protein and fat with a little bit of vegetables, we'll minimise the amount of time that we're in the fat storing zone. Okay, so the type of meals during that 10 a.m. after workout will keep you longer in your fat burning zone, your fat utilisation zone. Okay, you're not burning fat, you're using it, but we want to use fat, okay. So that means that by the time you're ready to go to sleep, you're back down into your fat utilisation zone massively. And you have been from the moment you went to sleep the previous night to the moment you go to sleep the following night. And that's what we want from a 10 a.m. session, okay. So I'll help you more with the type of foods and give you some examples later on in the day, and I'll put it on the Facebook page. But let's quickly just really go through the evening session. So we've got the evening charts here, and again the top part is for fat storage. So anything above that line is fat storage, and anything below the line is going to be fat usage. Okay, so here's not what to do if you're coming to an evening session. Okay, you wake up in the morning, you're going to be in fat utilisation zone. You have a sugary breakfast, you come back up again. You have a sugary lunch, a snack, a dinner, you come to boot camp, you go home, snack before bed, bit of fruit, sleep, next day. Okay, so the amount of time you spend again in fat usage is much smaller than in fat storage. Okay, so we need to be putting in protein and fat throughout the day with a cupful of vegetables, non-starchy, and maybe one piece or two of fruit within your meal. Okay, the longer you can stay in between meals, the better. So what we said as an example to start doing now is, before you come to boot camp here, make sure you're 3 to 5 hours in fast mode. Okay, so that means that since you've had your last meal or snack, so it's either dinner, lunch or snack, that was 3 to 5 hours before your workout. Okay, because that means that anything that we put in, carbohydrate, protein or fat, is well out of the bloodstream in time for when we go to boot camp. So when we come to boot camp in the evening session, we're already ready, our stores are ready to kick into fat usage, rather than having to get rid of the glucose and the sugar out of the bloodstream. Okay, so if you can do some kind of exercise in between, and not everyone can, but if you've got a spare 10 minutes, then what that will do, instead of keeping you up here during the daytime, let's say at lunchtime at work, okay, you can go for a 10-minute sprint around the block. Okay, if it's here that you go out, okay, so that's after breakfast, before lunch, you can then drop into that fat burning zone again, just as a little extra. Okay, rather than going up and up, you're going up, doing a bit of HIIT, working out as fast as you can for 10 minutes, and therefore you're just adding an extra bit of fat usage throughout your day, because you're not actually going to train till later on. Okay, so we look at, so the longer you can stay between your meals before your workout, the better. Okay, so we want to eat and get enough calories in, so we don't go into a plateau. But what we want to do is not graze throughout the day. We want to have like 3 to 5 hours between meals, especially 5 hours if you can, before you do any type of exercise. Okay. So the ideal evening scenario would be, or scenario, whatever you say, wake up in the morning. Here, we wake up here, we're in fast mode. Okay, so we're using fat when we wake up in the morning. Set your alarm for 10 minutes before you usually wake up. Okay, then you can do 10 minutes of skipping, 10 minutes around the block, sprinting, 25 dependent to 50, depending on how fit you are, of tuck jump burpees. That'll keep you longer in your fat usage zone. Okay, so that's 10 minutes before you usually do your routine to get ready for work. Then you can add in that extra HIIT burn. Okay, then you'll have your detox drink, go to work, or before work, have protein and fat, which still keeps you in your fat usage zone for breakfast. So that could be like usually some kind of eggs, and don't worry about how many eggs you're having. On the Bible it says 3, so if you're following the Bible, stick to that. But if you're wanting to try this new system, then maybe it will be some kind of protein like eggs, some good fats like half an avocado would be fine. We'll talk about portions later on in the week as well, and amounts. So we've got breakfast there. If it's protein and fat, that's fantastic. It keeps you in fat utilization zone. Lunchtime comes, we're busy at work, so we stay here. We're keeping busy, we're keeping active, so we're kind of staying there. We're not having anything to eat. Lunchtime comes, we might have some protein and fat. We need a little bit of carbs, so we might have, I don't know, like a little bit of rice noodles or a stir fry or something, which will take us a little bit into our fat storage zone, but that's okay. Then we're going to come home, go to boot camp. Whee! Here you go, fat usage. And then work out as hard as we can at boot camp, staying in that fat usage zone for as long as we can. Back at home, protein, fat, a little bit of carbs, maybe a piece of fruit, maybe takes us into here as we recover and add those nutrients and energy back into the body with our evening meal and dessert. Go to sleep. Woo! Wake up next day. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. I'll post the video up onto the Facebook page, and then any questions you can just give me a shout back on there underneath the video. Cool, thank you.